morning. Good morning. I am Debbie Rehart, and I share leadership of today's service with the Reverend Dr. Kathy Ellis. In the spirit, don't know what that was about. In the spirit of the transformative power of community in all of its forms, I am so happy to welcome you here to UCH. Whoever you are, wherever you live, whomever you love, whatever you do for a living, you are welcome at the Unitarian Church of Harrisburg. Whether you are a member or a visitor joining us today, in person or virtually, we are so happy that you have chosen to join us. An online Zoom coffee hour will follow services starting at 11:30 a.m. For those who are here in person, we will have coffee hour in the common room downstairs. We are so happy you have chosen to join us today and welcome you to our fellowship hours and any other in-person or online activities held by UCH. Welcome.
You're first.
Yes. You who feel your heart is breaking, come in.
You who are confused and wondering, come in.
You who are angry, in pain, or not wanting to be here, come in.
You who are hopeful and energized, come in.
Come into this community of your heart, where you have been held in love and comfort, or if you've just come here the first time, you will be held in love and comfort, where you have shared your joy and your spirit, where you have asked questions because you felt they needed asking, where you have found friendship and companions, where you have sometimes not agreed and sometimes not felt comforted and sometimes not felt heard.
Bring your broken heart and your grief. Share them.
Bring your confusion and your questions. Share them.
Bring your anger and your pain. Share them.
Bring your hope and your energy. Share them.
For here in this place, we can be together. We can gather in all the conflicting emotions tumbling around in our heads and our hearts. We bring them all here and lay them on the altar of community. For community means that fragile, not perfect human beings can come together in the name of peace and seek to find peace again.
Peace,
Hope.
healing.
May it be so. Come, let us worship together. In Unitarian Universalist congregations, we light a chalice to mark our coming together in worship. I read these words by Scott Taylor. We light this chalice for those who convinced us that it was safe to share our longings, for those who proved that not everyone will run from the weight of the pain that we carry, for those who held us in our fear and helped us heal from our regret, for those whose humble apologies made us believe that we too could be forgiven, and for those whose tenderness helped us see that we no longer needed to hide. Our vulnerability frees us. It makes holy the path we travel together. May this flame ever keep that in view. Before we rise in body or spirit for our first hymn, I want to take a minute to celebrate Yvonne and Corey, if you two would come up front for just a minute. You may notice in your order of service down there at the bottom, sort of at the end, it says all the people. The board voted to give Corey and Yvonne new job titles that better reflect what they actually do. So Corey is now the director, it is long, the director of Lifespan Faith Development. And Yvonne is the director of Music Ministries. Yay. So let us experience some music ministry.
opening hymn this morning is number 188, Come, Come, Whoever You Are. Please rise in body or spirit. The choir is going to help us with this. We will be singing this in a two-part round. We will start over here with round 1, and then I'll come over here for round 2. I promise we're going to go through one time before I make you all sing it in a round. But choir will be here to help you.
Thousand times broken your vows, 1,000 times you've broken your vows, 1,000 times. Wanderer, worshiper, lover of leaving, ours is no caravan of despair.
Good morning. Some of you might know me, some of you might not. My name is Kyle Petrus, but some might call me Kyle Petrus. I'll answer to either or, just as long as you don't say, hey you. The reason why I'm standing before you today is because I was asked to talk and reflect about setting roots and branching out. I am fairly new to the area. I guess fairly is a strong word. I've been in the area for about 4 years now. I came down to this area from north central, northeast Pennsylvania for work. As you might guess, most of my family is in the north, and I went to school out in Ohio, and all my friends are out in Ohio. So when I came to this area, I didn't really have a community. I didn't really fit in. I pretty much went to work and then went home and just repeated day in and day out. And that to be someone like that, it's tough. Some of you might imagine it is tough. Some of you have been through it. Some of you might not have. And so you look for a place to set roots in. And I can tell you, when I first came to this congregation, they had open arms, they were loving, they were caring, they were very nice, and they made me feel like I belonged. And so you're probably wondering why I mention this, and it's because, and if you're kind of suspicious as to why I'm mentioning this, it's because I wanted to mention about the pledge and how important it is to pledge. Make sure you make a pledge to this congregation. Arlie and Reverend Sandra, and I believe Reverend Kathy will be mentioning it more more kind of hitting the nail more on the head than I will, but I wanted to kind of broaden the view and talk about the importance of making that pledge and how it affects what are we seen as part of a community. And so it's, how do I want to word this? With pledges, they allow us to be able to do things. Many of you are part of committees or groups that have ideas on how you want to see how this congregation or this church progress. Some of it might involve just maintenance. Others might involve upkeeping the grounds. Some might have ideas on just ways that we can outreach to the community. And so that unfortunately takes funds. And so it's important to take that into consideration if you choose to be, if you're able to make a pledge, I would strongly recommend it because there's so many committees in this congregation that have. And Kyle has joined them all. I have joined them all. And so I could tell you we have so many ideas, and it's just, there are some maintenance issues that we just haven't gotten to and that need the work. And so it's important to just be able to pledge what you can. And if you can't, that is okay. I then recommend to maybe join a committee or even just to volunteer. If you want to volunteer, please see Kate Carpenter for opportunities. And I think it's a great way. For me, I didn't start with joining committees. I simply started with just volunteering. I volunteered to be an usher, and I volunteered to help with the grounds and gardening committee. And just with starting with that, if you can just imagine just a plant in the ground, with the proper soil, with proper watering, you can really set roots in. And I can assure you that this congregation is the perfect soil, the perfect watering to set those roots in and to branch out. You know, you meet people from all different backgrounds who had different upbringings and who had different experiences. And as different as those might be, I can tell you that in this congregation, I feel very connected to all of you. And so it's important, and I'm going to say this again, it's important to make sure that you pledge, because you're not only helping me or helping yourselves, but you might be helping your partner or the person to your left or to your right, or maybe a visitor who's here today that might consider being a new member, or even someone who has yet stepped through those doors and met this loving, wonderful, caring community. Thank you.
Good morning. As you heard earlier, my name is Corey, and I serve as your Director of Lifespan Faith Development. Got it. All right, today's story is titled The Girl Who Never Made a Mistake, and it's by Mark Pett with Gary Rubinstein. For Beatrice Bottomwell, Friday began like any other day. She matched her socks, and of course, she put her shoes on the proper feet. She remembered to feed her hamster, Humbert, his favorite food, broccoli. And when she made a sandwich for her brother, Carl's lunch, she used the exact same amount of peanut butter and jelly. When she stopped outside to greet her fans, she didn't forget to say good morning and thank you. They asked if she made her bed, and she had. They asked her if she forgot to do her math homework. Nope. What about tonight's talent show? They asked. I'm ready, said Beatrice with a smile, and all her juggling act had won 3 years in a row. Most people in town didn't even know Beatrice's name. They just called her the girl who never made mistakes, because for as long as anyone could remember, she never did. Unlike Beatrice, Carl made lots of mistakes. He ate his crayons and drew with his green beans. He danced with his hands and played the piano with his feet. Carl loved to make mistakes. At school, Beatrice was on a cooking team with her 2 best friends, Millie and Sarah. To make their giant rhubarb muffins, they needed 4 eggs. Beatrice went to the refrigerator and carefully chose the biggest, eggiest eggs that she could find. But on the way back, her legs slipped out from under her. The eggs went flying. Beatrice was about to make her very first mistake. But she didn't. That was close, thought Beatrice. For the rest of the school day, Beatrice could not stop thinking about her almost mistake. On her way home from school, Beatrice watched Millie and Sarah ice skating in the park. Come join us, said Millie. It's fun, said Sarah. Beatrice watched them slip and slide on the frozen pond. Millie and Sarah laughed as they wobbled on the ice. No thanks, said Beatrice. At supper, Beatrice barely touched her food. Is everything all right, kiddo? Asked her father. I'm worried I'm going to mess up tonight, said Beatrice, and everyone will be watching me. Worry? You don't make mistakes, he said with a smile. Beatrice tried to smile. After supper, Beatrice got ready for the talent show. First, she woke Humbert from his nap. Next, she got her salt shaker from the kitchen table. Finally, she filled a balloon with water. The school auditorium was packed. Beatrice felt her stomach jumping around inside her. Beatrice waited for the juggling music to begin. That's her. That's the girl who never makes mistakes, said a woman. Oh, we know that she's going to be perfect, said a man. When the music started, she tossed Humbert into the air. Next, she added the salt shaker, and finally the water balloon. Beatrice didn't miss a beat. The crowd clapped with delight, but Beatrice noticed something about the salt shaker. The specks falling out of it were not white. Achoo! Humbert was so surprised by his sneeze that he grabbed the water balloon with his claws. Kablooey! Humbert, pieces of water balloon and the pepper rained down on top of Beatrice. For the first time in a long time, as anyone could remember, Beatrice made a mistake. And it was a big one. The music stopped. Beatrice didn't know what to do. Cry? Run off the stage? The crowd sat stunned. They couldn't believe that the girl who never made mistakes made a mistake. Beatrice looked at Humbert. He looked back at her. His hamster fur was soaked and speckled with bits of balloon. Beatrice let out a giggle. The giggle grew into a chuckle, and the chuckle became a laugh. The people in the crowd looked at each other and then back to Beatrice. They began to giggle, then chuckle, then finally roar with laughter. Beatrice and the audience laughed until they couldn't remember why they were laughing. That night, Beatrice slept better than she ever had. In the morning, no fans greeted Beatrice. When she got dressed, Beatrice, for no reason at all, put a polka dot socks on one foot and a plaid sock on the other. Beatrice and Carl made sandwiches. This time they put the peanut butter and jelly on the outside. And they called it an inside-out PB&J. Lunch was messy and delicious. Later, Beatrice found Millie and Sarah skating in the park. They fell a lot, and they laughed. Now, people no longer call her the girl that never makes mistakes. They just call her Beatrice.
Now we bless you on your way. May you feel love every day. May your light shining bright transform the world. Now we bless you on your way. May you feel love every day. May your light shining bright transform the world with love.
Our reading is entitled, Because We Spill Not Only Milk, and it is by Nancy Schaefer. Because we spill not only milk, knocking it over with an elbow, but also spill seed on soil we thought was fertile, but isn't, when we reach out to wipe a small face, and also spill whole lives and only later see, in fading light, how much is gone and we hadn't intended it. Because we tear not only cloth, thinking to find a true edge, and instead making only a hole, but also tear friendships when we grow the whole mountainsides because we are so many, and we want to live right where the black oaks lived, once very quietly and still. Because we forget not only what we are doing in the kitchen and have to go back to the room that we were in before, I know that, remember why it was that we left, but also forgot entire lexicons of joy and how we lost ourselves for hours, and yet all that time were clearly found and held, and also forget the hungry not at our table. Because we weep not only at jade plants caught in freeze and precious papers left in rain, but also at legs that no longer walk, or never did, although from the outside they look like most others. And also weep at words once said as though they might be rearranged, but which once loose refuse to return, and we are helpless because we are imperfect and love so deeply we will never have enough days. We need the gift of starting over, beginning again, just this constant good, this saving hope.
Sing, be, live, see. This dark, stormy hour, the wind it stirs, the scorched earth cries out in vain. O war and power, you blind and blur, the torn heart cries out in pain. But music and singing have been my refuge, and music and singing shall be my light, a light of song, shining strong, hallelujah. Through darkness, pain, and strife, I'll sing, be, live, see, peace.
because we spill not only milk, because we are so very imperfect. Our hearts have been torn, and we have hurt others. And so we weep over words that were said, because we are so imperfect and love so deeply. We can't grow up without experiencing some shaming. In fact, there are some religions that teach and preach that you are shameful from the moment of your birth, so maybe even from the moment of your conception. This is not what we teach in Unitarian Universalism. Yet, we can't grow up without shaming. Even the best parents and teachers sometimes teach shame in disciplining children. Family rules, not healthy rules, but some families have rules that include being in control of everything, trying to do everything perfectly, getting all A's, denying any problems or keeping any problems secret. If any of those rules were present when you grew up, the family was teaching shame. Indeed, children actually shame themselves. Any of you parents, have you had a perfectionist child? Or perhaps you were a perfectionist child? Children can create perfectionism in themselves, and then the parents have to try to help them to get out of it. Children compare themselves to older children and adults, and they can't do. Their bodies and brains are not yet ready for them to do the things that older children and adults do, and so sometimes they shame themselves for that. I have met, and you have met, many people, grown-up people, people that I like and admire, who are afraid to actually show themselves or be themselves. They fear they would be misunderstood, wouldn't be liked, would be rejected. We want to be accepted. We want to belong. Kyle was talking about the sense of love and welcome and belonging that he has felt here. We all have these fears. And in our contemporary media and social media culture, it seems to be all right, even encouraged, to insult, attack, and shame others. And so we fear being vulnerable. We fear being blamed and shamed. I have to say that I used to just think that shame was something we don't want. Shame is really painful, and I still mostly think that. But during the Trump era, I also learned that being shameless is really a problem as well. Psychologist Albert Ellis, who is no relationship to me, said that blame is at the root of all human problems. Whether we blame ourselves, other people, the universe, God, the system, it creates a sense of wrongness that can't be fixed when we work on blaming people. Also, very much part of our contemporary culture. Sufi poet Hafiz wrote a lot of interesting little poems. This one is called The Sad Game. Blame keeps the sad game going. It keeps stealing all your wealth, giving it to an imbecile with no financial skills. Dear one, wise up. So blame and shame. Blame, shame, punishment, they are all around us. Blame is not about responsibility. Blame is not about understanding what happened. Blame doesn't take action to right wrong. When you blame anyone, you don't take any action. You just say, it's your problem, you did it. And some of the culture says that there are just bad people out there, and they deserve the blame, and we should get rid of them in one way or the other. Blame is vengeance, not accountability. Again, this is not Unitarian Universalism. We are all enough. We are all worthy of love. We don't need to carry the shame, and yet we do. Shame is so painful. I once saw an adult man crumble into childhood, screaming and wailing out of shame because he had lost his wallet. No, most of us don't experience that much pain, but it is painful, and so we try to get rid of it, pretend we don't have it, because it hurts. Because shame is the feeling that there is something wrong with you. Guilt, I happen to think that guilt, unlike what they talk about some religions teaching guilt is a very useful emotion if, in fact, it is about something that you have done, that you can stop doing, that you can make amends for, that you may be able to fix. It's a thing that you have done. Shame is a feeling that there's something basically wrong with you, that you are bad, that you have a hole inside you. We know there are no inherently bad people. There's definitely some inappropriate, bad, and harmful actions. Still, we do fear being unacceptable, and therefore shame prevents our showing our vulnerability. It prevents authenticity. We can't make real connections when we are feeling shame. We can't really forgive other people when we are feeling shame. And you know, some of those people who look like they've got it all together, they've done everything, are the very people who carry around a lot of shame. It's so painful, they actually need to hide it from themselves. They look perfect and can't forgive their own mistakes and vulnerabilities. Look at poor Beatrice. She couldn't take any chances and she missed having fun, being real, until she made a spectacular mistake and realized it wasn't so bad. Catholic spiritual teacher and writer Henry Nouwen wrote, "Forgiveness means that I am continually willing to forgive the other person for not being God, for not fulfilling all my needs when I want them. And I, too, must ask forgiveness for not being able to fulfill other people's needs." Forgive yourself for not being God. It's an interesting concept, eh? When you can forgive people for not being God, then you can celebrate that you and they are reflections of God, however you understand that word. We fear being vulnerable, and yet we are always vulnerable. We've had some fear about people falling down these steps because it has happened. Unitarian Universalist minister Dana McPheetries wrote about visiting a friend who had slipped on ice. "She broke her ankle," said Dana, "and was laid up for weeks and weeks. As I expressed my sympathy for her misfortune and suffering, a surprising phrase slipped out of my mouth. I said to her, 'I didn't realize you were breakable.'" And we laugh. It's a laugh of recognition because we are all breakable, and we know it. We all break in some ways and at some times in our lives, and vulnerability is an unavoidable part of life. Yet because we fear that pain and suffering, we try to hide it. We try to hide our vulnerability. Wei Lin Ye wrote, "Courage is vulnerability. Vulnerability is courage. Like shadow or light, neither one can exist without the other." I thought after everything was set up that I should have added courage to the title of the sermon, because vulnerability and authenticity require courage in a kind of psychology that I liked that was never as well known as Adlerian psychology. And they teach about the courage to be imperfect. It's something we all need. Now, people have told me that I was courageous at times in my life when it didn't feel like courage. It just was something I had to do. I left a tenured professorship to begin a private practice. A colleague told me they called it the golden handcuffs that I'd left behind. It didn't feel like courage to me. It was just something I had to do. I left the psychotherapy practice in order to be ordained as a minister. Some people called me courageous to change my life, but again, it felt like something that I was called to do. It was time for me to do it. In both of those cases, I did need courage to tell my dear husband what I was going to do. Don't think he was very happy about either of those things. But my connection to Rick matters deeply. And I don't want to be rejected, obviously, by the loved ones. On our first date, I have date in quotes. It was a time that I felt scared and courageous. Rick and I had known each other for about a year as colleagues at Holy Spirit Mental Health Center. We worked the night shift. The night shift at a mental health center with an inpatient unit occasionally has some very interesting, very busy times, but it has a lot of sitting around and waiting times, the trying to stay awake times. So Rick and I talked a lot. We had long conversations. After a while, people started saying to us, "What's going on with you two?" And we said, "Nothing." We were just slow in recognizing what other people had already begun to see. We were just work friends. Then I left a job to go to graduate school full time, and we went to an auction together over here, actually, Hawker's. It's been a long time since it was there, but there was Hawker's auction. At that auction, we both bid on an octagonal mirror. The auctioneer looked at us and said, "Aren't you two together? Keep it that way." And we laughed, and one of us bought that mirror. We went back to Rick's apartment, had a snack and talked some more. The radio was on, and a song came up that people my age will remember. It was Jim Croce's "Time in a Bottle." If I could put time in a bottle, the first thing that I'd like to do is to save every day till eternity passes away, just to spend it with you. But there never seems to be enough time to do the things you want to do once you find them. I've looked around enough to know that you're the one I want to go through time with. That song gave me the courage to be vulnerable, to speak what I finally realized what was in my heart and had been afraid to say. I was afraid of my vulnerability. I feared rejection. Also, at that time, women weren't supposed to do these things. Still, I swallowed hard and told Rick that I wanted to be more than friends. Suffice it to say that I was not rejected. We had that mirror for a long time. Eventually, somehow it broke, but we knew that our connection continued without the mirror. It is in important relationships that I have most experienced that courage to be imperfect, because those relationships matter. That's where we really want to be known and seen. The people who know us most deeply are the ones who can hurt us most deeply. I also felt courageous as a psychotherapy client, learning to face what I had experienced and felt in my life, learning to face and overcome those feelings of shame, learning to look in the mirror and see someone worthwhile, worth loving. It is our willingness to be authentic, to be vulnerable, to be visible, and our willingness to share what we think and how we feel that allows us to deeply connect. And I think that many of you are, most of you I hope, doing that at home and also more and more here. Because when we hide, we can't connect. We can't really allow ourselves to be loved or to believe that we are loved. Many of you may have seen a TED Talk by Brené Brown or read some of her books. She trained as a social worker and became a research professor studying human connection, vulnerability, courage, worthiness, and shame. Her 2010 TED Talk, The Power of Vulnerability, pushed her into fame. And now she's written several books, including The Gifts of Imperfection, The Courage to be Vulnerable, and I Thought It Was Just Me. She speaks and writes effectively and reaches many people all over the world with her message that connection is why we are here and shame unravels connection. She talks in her own talk about being a person in her own life who wanted to be the one in control, to not wanting to experience vulnerability. Her definition of vulnerability is uncertainty, risk, and emotional exposure. In her research work, she found a group of people she called wholehearted. These were people who had a strong sense of love and belonging, people who believed they are worthy of love and worthy of belonging. And she wanted to discover what it was about these people. How was it that they had those feelings? And she was kind of shocked by her discovery, actually, because what they had in common, these people, was courage, emotional courage. They had the courage to be imperfect. These were people who fully embraced their vulnerability, their breakableness, and their authenticity led to strong connections. They were willing to invest in relationships, willing to say, I love you, willing to say, I love you first. Brown discussed the unhealthy ways that many of us have used to deal with vulnerability. These might be familiar too. We numb it. We try to numb pain and fear. And when we numb, we also numb joy and gratitude and happiness. We try all the time to make the uncertain certain, to know what's going to happen in the future and make sure that that's what happens. But we can't, of course. And sometimes we give ourselves pain and shame when we realize that we can't. We try to be perfect, and since we can't, this only leads back to more pain and that fear of being discovered for who we are. Or we just pretend. We pretend that who we are and what we do doesn't really matter, doesn't matter to anybody else, doesn't really impact other people. But of course, it does matter. It matters who you are, how you impact people every day. Every day, if you are out in the world, you can greet someone and be kind. Every day at home, you can be kind and caring and check in with the people in your home. So, Brown, like many spiritual teachers, actually like me, advises giving up those strategies I just read. Instead, let ourselves be seen. Let ourselves love with our whole hearts, even though there is no guarantee, there is no certainty. Practice gratitude. Allow yourself to be thankful for the things in your life. Every day you can find something to be grateful for, even if it's really terrible, horrible, awful day. Allow yourself to feel that joy and happiness, and most of all, to believe that you are enough, just as you are. Dear ones, you are not perfect, and yet you are whole and you are lovable. You are enough. I hope that we can experience wholehearted and authentic living in this congregation. We can experience it together. We are vulnerable, breakable, and worthy of love. We are worthy of loving, and we are worthy of being loved. And what wondrous love this is, to love and to all friends who pain and sorrow mend. Amen. Blessed be. Ashe. And let's rise in body and spirit and sing, What Wondrous Love.
What wondrous love is this, O my soul, O my soul? What wondrous love is this, O my soul?
I'm going to do joys and sorrows a little differently this morning. Debbie will carry the basket of stones to the back of the room. And you can go by the side aisles to the back of the room, pick up a stone, and bring it forward. As you pick up that stone, I want you to hold the stone and invest the energy of your great joy that brought you flying in here this morning, or your great sorrow that made you drag your heels. Invest the energy, your energy, into that stone as you walk forward. And then place the stone in the bowl of water that represents this community and being held and all the feelings in this community. So I invite you to share your joy and sorrow this morning. And we have two sorrows, a former UCH member and apparently once a director of religious education, Jean Martin, died on Monday night. And Ray Harris's daughter-in-law's grandfather died at age 98. His name was Hakoba Kumiake. Kumigai. He was Japanese. Thank you. And the final stone, for all that is in our hearts and on our minds, being held in community. I ask you to join with me in a litany of wholeheartedness. Your words will be on the screen. Because there have been times when shame has crushed our ability to be wholehearted. Because we have not always had the courage to be imperfect. Because we have struggled to have compassion for ourselves and sometimes for others. Because we are sometimes afraid of our vulnerability, we let go. Because we are sometimes too scared to live authentically, because we want to be wholehearted people, confident in our worthiness and in our belonging, we let it go. May it be so. And let's take just a little bit of silence to let that sink in.
The Unitarian Church of Harrisburg is, as always, a freely gathered church of free people. The church is created, sustained, and supported by you. Each month, we share half of our Sunday plate with a local nonprofit organization. For February, UCH will be sharing the plate with Rebuilding Together Greater Harrisburg. There's more information about that in your insert. For the past 25 years, RTGH has been providing free home repair and modification services to local low-income homeowners such as the elderly, disabled, families with children, and veterans in Dauphin, Cumberland, Perry, and Upper York counties. For those who wish to contribute online, please see the email with a link for today's service, or visit uchbg.org homepage for options for contributing. For those who are here in the sanctuary, the collection plates will be passed around by the ushers. Your financial support and commitment matter. Please consider giving what you are able. We've received your monetary gifts. Now we ask for your gift of commitment by reading aloud our covenant. Love is the spirit of this congregation, and service is our gift. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another.
Let's rise in body and spirit and sing our closing hymn, "'Tis a Gift to Be Simple." So, my friends, I invite you to go in peace to encourage, equip, and empower, to be encouraged, equipped, and empowered. And as I sat, I remembered one of my favorite readings, 698 in the back of our hymnal, that somehow felt like it needed to be said today. Take courage, friends. The way is often hard. The path is never clear, and the stakes are very high. Take courage, for deep down there is another truth. You are not alone. Blessed be.